Every great leader, every person who has walked in purpose has mastered one crucial skill: hearing the right voice at the right time. The challenge is not whether the voice is speaking, but whether we are tuned in to listen. Today, I want to give you 3 simple keys that will clear the static, amplify your understanding, and help you hear with confidence. Are you ready? Ladies and gentlemen, the ability to hear the right voice at the right time is not just a skill, it is a necessity. Every breakthrough, every moment of clarity, every divine instruction comes when you are tuned in to the right frequency. But here's the challenge. The world is noisy. Your mind is noisy. Your life is filled with distractions, doubts, and decisions that cloud your ability to hear clearly. And if you don't learn how to silence the noise, you will miss the very voice that was meant to lead you into purpose. The first key is alignment. Before you can hear clearly, you must be positioned correctly. Think about it. When you turn on a radio, the station is already broadcasting, but if you're not tuned in, all you get is static. That's exactly how divine guidance works. The voice is speaking, but if you are out of alignment, all you will hear is confusion. Alignment is about positioning your mind, your heart, and your spirit to receive. It's about removing interference. Have you ever tried talking to someone in a loud, crowded room? You see their lips moving, you know they're speaking, but the noise drowns out their words. That's what happens when your life is filled with distractions. Some of you are wondering, why can't I hear clearly? Why does it feel like I'm getting mixed signals? It's because your frequency is off. Alignment requires intentionality. It's not something that just happens. You must make a decision to quiet the outside world, a decision to filter out voices that confuse you, a decision to tune your heart to what is being spoken. When you align yourself, clarity follows. Have you ever noticed that when you step away from the noise, when you take time to reflect, to focus, to be still, suddenly the answers become clear? That's not a coincidence. That's the power of alignment. Some of you are in a season where you are desperate for direction. You need an answer. You need clarity. But let me ask you, have you checked your alignment? Are you tuned in, or are you just hoping to catch a signal through all the noise? Because if you are not aligned, you will always struggle to hear clearly. But when you are, the voice becomes unmistakable. Now, once you are in alignment, there's another key that takes your ability to hear to a whole new level. It's the difference between hearing something and truly understanding it. And if you miss this next key, you will always find yourself second guessing whether what you heard was real or just your imagination. Are you ready? Let's go deeper. Alignment is the first key, but listen carefully. Alignment alone is not enough. You can be in the right place, you can be positioned correctly, but if you don't know how to recognize the voice, you will still miss it. And this is where most people struggle. How many times have you felt something deep inside, a thought, an impression, a nudge, but you ignored it, only to realize later that it was exactly what you needed to hear? You see, the problem is not that the voice is silent. The problem is that we don't always recognize it when it speaks. And if you don't recognize it, you will either dismiss it or mistake it for something else. Recognition requires familiarity. If you walked into a crowded room right now and someone you barely know called your name, you might hesitate. You might even ignore it. But if someone close to you, someone familiar, called your name, you would turn around instantly. Why? Because you know their voice. You don't have to guess You don't have to wonder. You recognize it the moment you hear it. That's the kind of familiarity you need. The more you recognize the voice, the clearer it becomes. And the clearer it becomes, the more confident you are in following it. But here's the challenge. There are many voices in this world. Voices of fear, voices of doubt, voices of distraction. And if you don't train yourself to recognize the right one, you will be led by the wrong ones. Think about this. Have you ever received an important call, but because you didn't have the number saved, you hesitated to answer? That's what happens when you don't recognize the voice of divine guidance. You hesitate, you second guess. You ask yourself, is this really what I'm supposed to do? Is this the right decision? And that hesitation can cost you opportunities, relationships, and even your destiny. So how do you recognize it? You train yourself. Just like an athlete trains their body to respond without thinking, you must train your spirit to recognize the right voice without hesitation. And the only way to do that is through repetition. The more you listen, the more familiar it becomes. The more familiar it becomes, the easier it is to recognize. And before you know it, you won't be asking, was that the voice? You will know it without a doubt. But listen, there's one more key, and this is the one that seals everything together. You can be aligned, you can recognize the voice, but if you don't act on what you hear, then nothing changes. And this is where most people stop. They hear, they recognize, but they don't move. Why? Because of fear, because of uncertainty, because they don't know how to take the next step. But let me tell you something. When you apply this final key, you won't just hear the voice, you will begin to see results. Are you ready? Let's go deeper. Alignment puts you in position. Recognition helps you identify the voice. But hear me, if you don't respond, if you don't act, nothing changes. This is where most people stop. They hear, they recognize, but they hesitate. And hesitation is the greatest enemy of clarity. You can't expect to move forward if you refuse to take the first step. You can't expect direction if you ignore the instructions. The voice you hear is not speaking for entertainment. It's speaking to guide you. Some of you have been hearing the same instruction over and over again, but you keep waiting for more confirmation. You keep waiting for the perfect moment. But listen, clarity doesn't come before obedience. It comes after. You won't always understand everything in the beginning, but you must move. Think about this. Have you ever driven in thick fog at night? Your headlights don't show you the entire road. They only reveal a few feet ahead. But as you move forward, the next few feet become visible. If you refuse to drive because you can't see the entire journey, you'll never reach your destination. That's how divine guidance works. You receive enough to take the next step. And when you take it, more becomes clear. But the problem is, we want the full picture before we move. We want to see the outcome before we take the risk. But let me tell you something. If you wait for everything to make perfect sense, you will never move. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in life happen after you step out, not before. The voice doesn't just speak to give you information, it speaks to bring transformation. But transformation only happens when you apply what you hear. You can listen to wisdom all day, but if you don't apply it, nothing happens. Some of you are wondering why you're stuck, why you're not seeing progress, why you feel disconnected. It's because you've heard the voice, but you haven't acted on it. The longer you delay, the quieter the voice becomes. Not because it stops speaking, but because hesitation creates distance. The more you ignore it, the harder it becomes to hear. But the moment you move, the moment you step out, something shifts. It comes after obedience. The confidence you need, it comes after you take the step. Now listen closely, because this is the part most people don't talk about. When you start following the voice, when you start stepping into your purpose, there is one thing that will try to stop you. One thing that will make you question everything you've heard. One thing that, if you're not prepared for it, will shake your confidence and cause you to retreat. But if you understand this, you will never be shaken again. Are you ready? Let's go even deeper. You've aligned yourself. You've learned to recognize the voice. You've taken the step to obey. But now something happens. The moment you start following divine guidance, the moment you step into purpose, something rises up against you. Resistance, opposition, uncertainty. And if you don't understand what's happening, you will begin to question everything. Have you ever noticed that the moment you make a decision to change, to grow, to move forward, things suddenly become difficult? Doors that seemed open before start to close. People you thought would support you start to pull away. Doubt starts whispering, "Did you really hear right? Are you sure this is the right path?" Listen carefully. Resistance does not mean you're on the wrong path. In fact, most of the time, it's proof that you are on the right one. Because when you start moving in alignment with your destiny, everything that was keeping you bound will try to hold you back. Think about an airplane. It doesn't take off by moving with the wind. It takes off by pushing against it. The resistance is what lifts it higher. That means the very thing that's trying to stop you is actually what's going to take you higher. But this is where most people give up. They mistake resistance for a sign that they should turn back. They think, maybe I heard wrong. Maybe this isn't meant for me. No, the struggle is not a sign to stop, it's a sign to push through. Look at your life right now. Where have you been facing resistance? Where has fear been creeping in? Where have obstacles suddenly appeared? That's not the moment to quit. That's the moment to go even deeper, because the greatest breakthroughs come right after the greatest opposition. But here's the key. You cannot fight resistance with emotions. You cannot let your feelings dictate your decisions. If you let fear, frustration, or doubt control you, you will hesitate, and hesitation will pull you backwards. You must be firm. You must stand on what you heard and refuse to back down. Now, here's the secret. If you keep pressing forward despite the resistance, something shifts. The same wind that was pushing against you will start to carry you. The same opposition that tried to break you will end up making you stronger. But you have to endure that moment. You have to refuse to be shaken. And listen, because this is where it all comes together. There is one final piece to this. One thing that, if you miss it, will cause you to repeat the same cycles over and over again. One thing that determines whether you stay stuck or move into everything you were created for. Are you ready? Because this next key will change everything. You've aligned yourself, you've recognized the voice, you've obeyed the instruction, you've pushed through the resistance, and now you've arrived at the most critical step. This is where most people either rise or fall. Not because they didn't hear, not because they didn't obey, not even because of the opposition, but because they failed to do one thing: remain consistent. It's not enough to hear the voice once. It's not enough to follow the voice once. The key to sustained clarity is consistency. If you only listen when you're in trouble, if you only align when you're desperate for answers, you always find yourself in a cycle of confusion. In one season, out the next. Hearing clearly one day, struggling the next. Look at anything in life, success, growth, transformation. It doesn't come from one great moment. It comes from daily discipline. Athletes don't win championships because they train for a week. Musicians don't master their craft by practicing once. They train, they commit, they repeat until it becomes second nature. This is where the real test begins. Because once you've heard, once you've moved, once you've broken through resistance, you must keep going every single day. And this is where many people fail. They expect one moment of clarity to last a lifetime. But listen, even the strongest signal needs to be tuned in regularly. If you stop checking your alignment, if you stop listening, if you stop obeying, eventually the voice will seem distant. Not because it stopped speaking, but because you stopped listening. Some of you have felt like you lost direction. You remember a time when you heard clearly, when you were confident in the path, but now it feels like the voice is silent. Let me tell you why. You stopped where you should have continued. You treated clarity like an event when it was meant to be a lifestyle. But here's the good news. You can realign. You can reset your focus. You can step back into the flow of divine guidance. And when you do, you will realize the voice never left. The clarity was always there. You just needed to reconnect. Now, here's the final truth. When you live in alignment, when you recognize the voice, when you obey without hesitation, when you push through resistance, and when you stay consistent, something powerful happens. Something that separates ordinary people from those who truly live with purpose. And if you can grasp this last principle, you will never struggle with clarity again. You will step into a level of confidence, a level of direction, a level of clarity that most people only dream about. Are you ready? Because this is what changes everything. Let's go deeper. You've aligned yourself. You've recognized the voice. You've obeyed. You've pressed through resistance. You've committed to consistency. And now you step into something greater. Because when you live this way, something shifts. You stop wondering if you're hearing the voice, and instead you start walking in it daily. The decisions that once made you hesitate, now you move with confidence. The uncertainty that once kept you stuck, now you know what to do. Why? Because hearing the voice is no longer an event. It has become a lifestyle. This is where you move beyond just hearing and into partnership. You don't just receive guidance, you flow with it. You don't just wait for direction, you anticipate it. You don't just react, you respond. And when this happens, life is no longer a guessing game. You no longer wander. You no longer question whether you're in the right place. You know. Think about it. When you first learn to drive, every move feels uncertain. You're thinking about every turn, every stop, every signal. But over time, something happens. You don't think about it anymore. You just do it. It becomes natural. It becomes automatic. And that's exactly what happens when you stay in tune with divine guidance. It's no longer something you struggle to hear. It's something you live in. But here's the problem. Most people never get to this level. They stop at consistency. They settle for just hearing every now and then. They treat divine direction like a backup plan instead of a way of life. And that's why they still struggle. That's why they still second guess, because they've treated what should be a daily connection as an occasional experience. But when you truly lock in, when you commit fully, you step into something most people never experience. A flow where every step feels ordered, where even in uncertainty you have peace, where even in challenges you have clarity. And once you enter this flow, everything changes. Your confidence changes, your decisions change, your life changes. Some of you have been waiting for this. You've been longing for that moment. where things just click, where you no longer have to strain to hear because the voice is so clear. Let me tell you, it's possible, it's available, but only if you commit to going all in. And now, there's only one more thing you need to know. One final truth that separates those who just hear the voice from those who actually live out their purpose. One thing that if you grasp it, will ensure you never fall back into confusion again. Are you ready? Because this is the key to unlocking everything. Let's go even deeper. You've aligned yourself, you've recognized the voice, you've obeyed, you've pressed through resistance, you've committed to consistency, you've stepped into the flow. But now comes the real test. Because the moment you begin to walk in this clarity, the moment you start living in divine direction, you will be tested. Not to break you, not to confuse you, but to prove that you are ready for the next level. And listen carefully. If you don't recognize the test, you might mistake it for failure. You might think something is wrong, but no, this is the moment of confirmation. Think about gold. Before it is pure, it must go through fire. Before it reaches its highest value, it must be refined. That's what happens when you reach this stage. The clarity you have gained, it must be tested in real situations, not for you to fail, but for you to become unshakable. This is where distractions will come, opportunities that look good but don't align, voices that try to pull you in a different direction, doubt will try to creep in. The question is, will you hold firm to what you've heard? Because this is where most people fall back. They were confident when everything was clear, but the moment the test came, they questioned what they knew. They asked, did I really hear right? Maybe I should reconsider. And that hesitation pulls them back into confusion. But listen, if you recognize the test for what it is, you won't be shaken. Instead of panicking, you will say, I know what I heard. I know where I'm going. I will not be moved. And here's the key. Once you pass this test, something powerful happens. Your confidence is no longer based on feelings. It's no longer based on circumstances. It's built on conviction. And once you have conviction, you cannot be manipulated. You cannot be deceived. You cannot be swayed by distractions. Some of you are in this exact moment right now. You've been walking in clarity, but suddenly things feel uncertain. The test has come, and you're wondering what to do. Let me tell you, stand firm. Hold on to what you have heard. Do not waver. Because on the other side of this test is another level of clarity, another level of purpose, another level of direction. But listen, there's one final thing you need to understand. One last principle that will ensure that this clarity never fades. One last key that will secure everything you've learned, everything you've received, and take it to a place where it cannot be shaken. And if you get this, you will walk in confidence for the rest of your life. Are you ready? Because this is the ultimate key. Let's go deeper. You've aligned yourself. You've recognized the voice. You've obeyed. You've pressed through resistance. You've stayed consistent. You've stepped into the flow. You've passed the test. But now comes the moment that will determine everything. Because hearing the voice is one thing, following it is another. But the question is, can you be trusted with more? Listen carefully. What you do with what you've been given determines what you receive next. If you only follow the voice when it's convenient, if you only listen when it benefits you, if you treat divine direction like an option instead of a priority, you will stay at the same level, stuck, repeating the same cycles, wondering why nothing is changing. But here's the truth. When you prove yourself faithful with what you've already been given, more is released. clarity increases, confidence grows, opportunities begin to appear, and suddenly things that once felt impossible become effortless. Some people wonder why they don't hear as clearly as they used to, why they feel stuck, why they aren't seeing progress. The reason? They stopped applying what they already knew. They received the instruction, but didn't act. They heard the direction, but delayed. And over time, the voice seemed distant. Not because it stopped speaking, but because they stopped responding. Imagine someone who keeps asking for directions, but never follows them. Eventually, they'll stop receiving new ones. Because what's the point? They never moved on what they were already told. That's how it works. If you don't act on what you've already heard, you won't receive the next step. But here's the good news. The moment you start applying what you've been given, clarity returns. The moment you take the step you've been avoiding, the next door opens. The moment you stop hesitating, momentum begins. Look at your life right now. What's the last instruction you received? What's the last direction you were given? Have you acted on it? Or are you still waiting for more confirmation, more details, more assurance? The answer you're looking for isn't more information, it's obedience. And when you truly grasp this, everything changes. You stop waiting for clarity to come before you move, and you realize clarity comes as you move. That's the difference between those who just hear the voice and those who live by it. But listen, there's one last thing you need to know. One final principle that seals everything. The key to not just hearing the voice, but walking in divine direction for the rest of your life. And if you can grasp this, you will never struggle with confusion again. Are you ready? Because this is the moment everything comes together. Let's go even deeper. You've aligned yourself. You've recognized the voice. You've obeyed. You've pressed through resistance. You've stayed consistent. You've stepped into the flow. You've passed the test. You've acted on what you received. And now you must learn the most critical lesson of all. Because here's the truth. Hearing the voice is not just about you. It's not just about your success, your breakthrough, your clarity. It's about something bigger. And this is where many people get stuck. They assume that divine guidance is only for personal benefit, only to help them navigate life. But listen carefully. If the voice is leading you, it's because you have an assignment. There is something you were placed here to do, something beyond your personal comfort, beyond your own success. A purpose that will impact others. If you only listen when it benefits you, if you only follow when it aligns with your desires, you will miss the bigger picture. You will settle for personal clarity when you were meant to walk in purpose. Look at every great leader, every person who has truly made an impact. They didn't just receive clarity for themselves, they received it to serve others. They understood that divine direction wasn't just for their own success, but for something greater. And because of that, their influence extended beyond their own lives. Some of you have been wondering why the voice seems distant, why you feel like you're not hearing as clearly as before. And the reason? You've been treating the voice as a personal guide instead of a divine assignment. You've been asking for direction only for yourself. But the moment you start asking, how can I serve? How can I impact? How can I fulfill my purpose? Everything changes. Because clarity increases when your focus shifts from receiving to giving. When you stop chasing answers for personal gain and start walking in the direction that benefits others, you step into a greater flow of wisdom, insight, and revelation. And listen, this is what separates those who simply live their lives from those who change the world. The ones who understand that their clarity isn't just for them, that their direction is meant to impact others, that their purpose is connected to something far greater than themselves, those are the ones who leave a legacy. So the question is, will you settle for personal clarity, or will you step into your true assignment? Will you live just to receive, or will you walk in purpose? Because the moment you embrace this truth, everything shifts. But now, there's one final key that will bring everything together. One last principle that will secure your ability to hear, follow, and fulfill your purpose for the rest of your life. And if you grasp this, you will never walk in uncertainty again. Are you ready? Because this is the moment of transformation. Let's go deeper. You've aligned yourself. You've recognized the voice. You've obeyed. You've pressed through resistance. You've stayed consistent. You've stepped into the flow. You've passed the test. You've acted on what you received. You've embraced the assignment. And now comes the final key, because hearing the voice is not enough. Following the voice is not enough. Even fulfilling your assignment is not enough. There is one last principle that determines whether you will sustain this for a lifetime or lose it over time. And that key is staying connected. Because the moment you start thinking, I've mastered this, I've arrived, I don't need guidance anymore, that's the moment you begin to drift. The moment you stop seeking direction is the moment you start walking in your own wisdom. And the problem with that? Human wisdom is limited. Divine direction is unlimited. Think about it. When you charge your phone, it works at full power. But the moment you unplug it, the battery begins to drain. It doesn't happen instantly, but over time, it gets weaker, slower, until eventually it dies. That's exactly how it works with hearing the voice. The moment you disconnect, you may not notice it right away. You might still have momentum, but slowly clarity fades, confidence weakens, and before you know it, you're running on empty. That's why the most dangerous thing you can do is assume you no longer need connection. Because the truth is, the more you grow, the more you need guidance. The higher you go, the more wisdom you require. The greater your assignment, the more you need to hear. Some people wonder why they were once clear, once confident, once in the flow, but now they feel lost. They assume something changed. But the truth? They disconnected. Stopped making the voice a priority. They stopped seeking wisdom daily. They stop aligning themselves. But listen, you don't have to live that way. You don't have to go through seasons of clarity followed by seasons of confusion. The key to lifelong clarity is simple. Stay connected. Don't wait until you're lost to seek direction. Don't wait until things fall apart to ask for guidance. Make it your daily lifestyle. And when you do that, you will never walk in uncertainty again. Because now you don't just hear the voice, you live by it. You don't just receive direction, you flow in it. And once you reach this place, you step into something most people never experience, a life of complete confidence, purpose, and impact. So the question is, will you stay connected? Because if you do, you will never wonder which way to go again. You will never second guess your direction. You will never struggle with uncertainty. You will walk in clarity for the rest of your life.